Welcome to Sit Around the Fire, the podcast dedicated to the men and women on the front lines, first responders, military personnel, and their families. I'm your host, Ashley Dillard, a retired firefighter paramedic turned full-time mental health professional. My passion is helping the helpers. Together, we'll explore the challenges, the triumphs, and the real stories behind the uniform. In each episode, we'll talk about mental, physical, and spiritual wellness, along with the unique culture that comes along with serving in a high-stress environment. From building strong relationships to navigating the weight of the job, this is a space where we can be real, share experiences, and support one another. Whether you're on the front lines yourself or you're supporting someone who is, this is a podcast to remind you that you are not alone. So grab a seat, pull up to the fire, and let's get into it. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm excited to sit down with you today and talk about one of the really popular treatment modalities that has hit the mental health market, if you want to call it that, or a possibility as a treatment. It's become super popular and very popular within the community of first responders, and that is going to be ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Now, I want you to think about what happens when you have done all the quote-unquote right things. Let's say talk therapy, you've tried out medication, or really you've just tried that whole pushing through mentality of keeping with the grind, shoving things down, and you're still feeling incredibly stuck. This is something that is so common for pretty much literally everyone, is we get into these ideas or we try out a bunch of different therapeutic modalities and we feel like we're hitting our heads against the wall. And there's so much to dive into and explore as to why this happens. And so much of it we can explain in terms of the conscious and the subconscious mind. But I want to talk specifically today about a really cool way and a totally different kind of progressive therapy that can allow us to break through so many of these barriers and actually start creating changes within the scope of our lives and the things that we want to focus on and work on so that we can transform whatever has happened or is going on in the context of our lives. So ketamine-assisted therapy, or often referred to as CAP, is a really highly promising science-backed treatment that is helping first responders and veterans heal in different ways. Now, we have to talk about this and still acknowledge that there is a lot of stigmas, myths, and misconceptions as well with this type of work. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. But I really want to dial in and drive home that this is about healing and transformation. It's not about escaping what's going on within your life. This isn't a panacea or a cure-all thing that is going to fix everything. This is going to be a tool or a method to allow you to tap into the places where you can actually fix these things. Now, let's talk about what ketamine-assisted psychotherapy actually is. So if we look at CAP, it is a therapy that combines a low dose of ketamine with the psychological support behind it. So this is not only before, during, and after sessions, but this isn't the kind of recreational use format where you're just using it on your own and hoping for the best. This is incredibly structured in terms of it's medically supervised, and we go into it with the intentional healing modality side of things. Ketamine and the way that it acts and works in the brain is we're going to get a little sciencey here, but we kind of have to in order to explain how this is science-backed. So ketamine acts on the glutamate system. This specifically is going to work on the NMDA receptor, which is crucial for memory and mood regulation. What happens is by blocking the NMDA receptors is going to boost glutamate release. And in turn, what happens is it's going to activate the AMPA receptors, which lead to the release of a very specific neurotropic factor. We call this the BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. Now, BDNF is the huge player when it comes to neuroplasticity. And when we speak to neuroplasticity, it's the brain's ability to build new connections, or even simply put to words, is the brain's ability to change. And this neuroplasticity, why is it so important and why do we need to talk about it, is because this is what's going to actually help us to break the patterns of things like anxiety, depression, and trauma, as well as being able to emotionally process, regulate, and move through the world in a different way. Ketamine also reduces activity in what we refer to as the default mode network. Now, I want you to think of or visualize a hill that's covered with snow, and a bunch of sleds have gone down this hill. When this happens, we've all seen what this looks like, is these deep groove patterns, these established pathways get very well worn into this snow-covered hill. This becomes very hard for us to break outside of these patterns and behaviors because they are the default way of doing things. Nearly almost impossible, I'd say, is sometimes you can get a little bit of a change, but then you're going to default back to whatever that strongest behavior, that strongest neural pathway is. So what happens when we use modalities such as ketamine is if we're getting 6 feet of fresh snow upon this hill. And now that part of the brain that's linked to things like ego and negative self-talk or rumination, all things held within the subconscious, we're now able to actually formulate a new default way of doing things. So it doesn't result in those old patterns, thoughts, and behaviors that it used to. When we bypass the conscious mind, we find that we are able to get into what we call the subconscious. And we're going to actually dive into this a little bit deeper in some episodes coming up, because they really need their own episode to talk more about the conscious and the subconscious mind. But when the default mode network is relaxed, the brain is going to enter a state where the critical gatekeeping of the conscious mind is softened. Sometimes we actually refer to this as the critical factor. It's the filter where when we take in information and something is said, let's say, for example, someone tells you that you are lovable or you are accepted. We'll just get into the big stuff, the nitty-gritty now. Your critical factor is the part of your conscious mind that's going to take that in, and it's going to actually decide whether or not this is true. So it's going to go through a series of filters and rationalizations to say, am I actually lovable? Am I actually good enough? Am I actually accepted? And if it doesn't have the backing or the information to say, yes, that's true, the critical factor is going to reject it. Thus, this is why we come into problems when we think about doing things just only like talk therapy, which is great. And I'm 100% here to say that talk therapy very much has its place and it is very important. But if the critical factor is unwilling to actually accept those truths, it's not going to. And you're going to really kind of end up in the same place that you are. But once we can use things like ketamine to soften that, basically totally bypassing the critical factor, it gives us complete access into the subconscious. And the subconscious is where our deep-rooted memories are. Traumas, emotions, beliefs, and habits are all stored within the subconscious. So even though you think that, the conscious mind is the one that's constantly thinking over things, and the chaoticness and all the emotions are coming from the conscious mind. That's not actually the way it works. All of that is stored within the subconscious. When we are able to access that part of our mind, the subconscious part, it is going to allow us to reprocess past events in new ways. And the really cool thing, amazing, actually, I would say, about ketamine is that third-party experience that it gives us, where it allows us to do this in a new way that's free from judgment, free from fear, or free for the need of trying to explain the heck out of everything. Is we're able to process this in a different way without that critical factor constantly giving us that negative feedback. This is incredibly impactful for first responders in general, because trauma in this population and the culture of the first responder is stored in the body, not just in the memory. If you recall an event of something that happened, whether someone, let's say, told you that you were bad, or told you that you weren't enough. If you can find where that physical sensation, the body felt sense, shows up with that, let's say that your stomach hurts, or even so, let's say you have lower back pain, and we're able to identify that the lower back pain is actually associated with anger. And anger, if we follow it down even further, comes back to that belief of maybe your dad told you you weren't good enough, or that you got in trouble over certain things. And that lower back pain is actually that old belief that's being held there within the body. The same thing happens when it comes to the first responder with trauma and things that we see, is that our body is going to remember those things. It can get stored in the body in different places that show up in a variety of different symptoms. Things like chest tightness or pain, tightness or stiffness in the shoulders, in the back, stomach issues, IBS, sensitivities to food, headaches. All of those things can show up as symptoms of the bigger underlying root cause that's going on within the subconscious mind. Ketamine is going to give us that unique window to be able to interrupt those rigid stress-based neural loops. Those things that become very well established, that default mode network, the way we always respond to things or the way that we handle things. It will help us to reframe identity, beliefs, and all those coping mechanisms, because we're able to tap into the subconscious mind when we do this. The process itself is going to offer so much emotional release and formation of these new narratives, which, if this was ever the key or the ticket to getting out of that feeling of being stuck, this is it. It's your beliefs that are actually the things that are causing you suffering and keeping you stuck. By changing these narratives and working with them, we're actually able to create ones that are not based out of fear, not based out of lack, not based out of stress, anxiety, fill in the blank, but we're more able to tap into things like compassion and strength and clarity and love and abundance and all the really good things that we all want to experience. I think it's worthwhile, as we're talking about KEP, to understand how does the whole entire process work. And I'm only going to speak to the way that we use KEP within the practice at Sit Around the Fire. All KEP practitioners, KEP clinics are all different, so I really, really do encourage you to do your homework and your research in terms of what it looks like for each individual location. But in general, this is how I'm going to talk about it from our perspective and our mission and how we work with it in the practice that we do. We believe that preparation is 100% crucial. It's actually, in fact, I would call it a non-negotiable. The ketamine itself, or ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, is not going to be a quick fix. So if you're in this or have the intention or the goal of one session is going to be a miracle worker cure-all, that's not going to be how it plays out for you. It isn't a quick fix. It's a collaboration with your nervous system and with the subconscious mind. So a good provider, in our opinion, will provide you with sufficient preparation before you go into any session. That can be all kinds of things in terms of helping to create safety and security within your own body, how to do some of the processing, working on setting your intentions and your goals. How do you want to feel differently after this process is over? What are some of the potential main landmarks that we might be looking for? It's also very much about creating rapport and safety within the relationship between the therapist and the client. If you are not able to trust that person helping to guide you into the subconscious and into those non-ordinary states of consciousness, it's going to make it really difficult to get the progress that you're looking for. So rapport in the relationship is probably one of the number one most important things when it comes to the preparation phase of getting ready for doing your actual ketamine sessions. There is going to be psychological screening that's done as well too. So be it there aren't a ton of no-goes or red flags when it comes to doing ketamine-assisted therapy, there are some. And that's where those checks and balances come in through the preparation as well. It's important that people have some kind of stability within their life, even though you might be working on some pretty tough issues and things going on, but having the capacity to handle what the sessions can bring you and the support around that is really crucial. There's also going to be medical screening. So for our practice particularly, after you've done a couple of preparation sessions, then you're going to actually participate in your medical screening, which is done by a medical doctor. You'll actually get your own prescription for the ketamine treatment. So nothing is done willy-nilly. Everything is very controlled and monitored, including how we do dosing as well too, depending on the person, depending on their experience perhaps of doing some of this kind of non-ordinary work and things like that. Within the preparation, we're also going to work a lot on how do we set up your life and your routines and rituals as best as possible to support you throughout the journey. So you're going to learn things like breath work and how to journal, how to be aware of your body felt sense and how your emotions are showing up within how your body is feeling. So you're not just going to be handed insight. You're literally preparing to meet yourself in a deeper way. And the therapist, the clinician facilitating, is the one that's going to be there with you as you make this deep connection with yourself. So what happens during an actual ketamine session? The set and setting is incredibly important here. So we work with people to really make sure that their mindset coming into their sessions is the best that it possibly can be. Now, we're not saying like you're going to come into the session with no anxiety or no depression or nothing. Like that's not what we're saying here. But we're looking for how do we create the best mindset around what your actual intensive session is going to look like. Things like avoiding a lot of stress coming in or conflict between people. That's huge as you come into your actual day of session. The setting we take incredibly seriously. So we've put a lot of effort into how we set up the space so that you feel as safe and the most comfortable as possible. And a lot of this comfortability is done as well in the preparation session so that you're familiar with how the space is and how the space feels to you. We want it to be comfortable. you're going to be provided with things like eye shades, and there will be music for the way that we run it. And the music is specialized for each person that comes to do the treatment. So you're going to have your therapist there as well as that trusted guide helping you to navigate after whatever comes up within the session. It's also the special time and place to allow other people to show up for you to help facilitate through your own healing journey. As first responders, we do a really, really good job at showing up for other people, and we often don't like asking for help or allowing other people to show up for us. But this is where you are invited to embrace the idea of allowing someone else to show up for you. Now, sessions, they are going to be different and none the same every single time. You might get that kind of like floating sensation or some form of your memories have showed up, or there could be metaphors that come out of it as well. But most importantly, people often feel incredibly emotionally safe enough to revisit those events or feelings that they previously avoided. So we call this with the ketamine, like anything that is coming up underneath is a non-specific amplifier through the medicine. So what was low grade already there is probably going to come up in some form or fashion. Not always, we don't know, but a lot of time that's what happens, but it gives you that capacity and that different way of being able to actually process things. Equally as important as the preparation and the actual day of sessions is the integration session itself. So we do integration sessions after every medicine session. That way we're actually able to make the healing become real. And those transformations that the ketamine has opened the door to, we're actually going to work to establish those and to put those into what life on the other side really looks like. So within the integration sessions, they typically include talk therapy sessions to make sense as best as we can of the experience. But we're also going to look at things like journaling or creative expression or how your body is feeling as well too, and looking for those changes that you're seeing within yourself and within how you live life around you. So it can be, I refer to them a lot as micro changes, or the things that you maybe notice on a very low level, but they are drastically different. So maybe I didn't get as angry as I usually do, or this person didn't really set me off like they used to, or I have so much more patience and capacity to be with my kids. Nature feels so different. I have so much more energy to do these things, or I want to eat healthy and exercise. All of that stuff is included within those micro changes that we look for. And the integration really gives you that connection back into the experience. The brain is in a neuroplastic window, as we call it, and what we do and reflect on after matters just as much as what happened during the session. So, for example, if we are trying to avoid zombie or doom scrolling, let's say, after that medicine session is the best time to not do that behavior that you don't want to do anymore. So in integration, we really work to set that up as much as possible so that when we're creating those new neural networks and that new default way of doing things through the access to the subconscious, we're able to actually do those things. You guys, what if I told you that the key to overcoming anything in life starts with one simple question? What's your why? Your mindset shapes your reality. Your thoughts can fuel resilience, or they can truly hold you back. In this brand new series coming up, Mindset to Manifestations, we're diving deep into how you can shift your state, break free of fear and stress, and truly create the life that you want. In our first episode, we're talking about getting to know your why, because Viktor Frankl said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." We'll explore the science behind mindset, the power of thoughts, and how people like Frankl and Dr. Joe Dispenza prove that what we focus on can literally change our lives. So if you're ready to step into a new level of clarity and purpose, join me. New episode drops on Monday. Don't miss it. Subscribe now, follow along, and let's start changing our state together. There are, within the practice that we have at Sit Around the Fire, there's so many stories to tell, it's hard to choose just one, but I want to talk about a firefighter that I worked with through the ketamine series who came in with a goal of wanting to work with anger and irritability. They were seeing anger showing up in their lives in a multitude of fashions, including being very short and mean and aggressive with their spouse. Also included like that, we'll call it short fuse mentality, where just a little annoyance would completely set them off. Living a life very much under this constant feel of stress and pressure to get everything right, because if things didn't go right, that didn't feel very good. So it was an extreme amount of wanting to control things and also being very angry when that outcome didn't match what they wanted to happen. They came in and we did the ketamine series with them. And at the end of it, they reflected on how incredibly transformed their entire life had felt. And so much so as even their spouse made specific comments about noticing how much different they are and little things that would have impacted this person and sent them from a 1 or 2 to a 10 were suddenly gone. And it's just such a cool way of looking at how when we can get that emotional clarity or understand why things are happening and process them with a different lens, that feeling of shame and guilt really goes away. And those old narratives surrounded around those beliefs that maybe we don't want to live under anymore, they're finally able to be worked with and addressed in a way that's long lasting. And ultimately, you get to rediscover like what your purpose is and why you're meant to do this life and live this life that you are living. When we talk about the safety, legality aspect of ketamine, and we didn't tap into this early on, but ketamine was developed back in the Vietnam War era as they needed some kind of frontline medication for soldiers to be able to use in a combat trauma scenario that wasn't going to mess with people's vitals. So it wasn't going to drop blood pressure and increase bleeding and things like that. So they developed this ketamine medication with it. So it's been around for a very long time. And in terms of the mental health side of things, it's legal in many, many places and typically offered by licensed providers in a variety of ways that looks like. It's covered in some cases by veteran support organizations and clinical research studies. There's been quite a few studies done on it as well. But I want to encourage you, if you're looking for a legitimate provider, is a couple things to take note of. I don't personally feel like you should embark on this type of modality solo. So I 100%, 10 out of 10, recommend that you find somebody that you trust and can connect with to take you through this type of journey. So look for someone who has training in the modality, that has experience, that's gone through their own ketamine work as well. I don't believe that you can effectively really do the work without having experienced it. Again, that's my 100% opinion to it. But looking for a culturally competent, trauma-informed therapist is really important. So there are a lot of really good first responder therapists and military as well that are doing and using this work, and knowing that they're competent and they can understand what you've been through is really, really helpful. And I also believe looking for someone who puts a strong emphasis on preparation and integration as well. So just doing the sessions and that being it, not necessarily what I feel is the most beneficial. So looking for somebody with that preparation and integration aspect as well. This is a structured, guided therapeutic approach. It's not a psychedelic free-for-all. So making sure that you feel comfortable in that, and it's somebody that takes you through the entire process. We know that healing is possible, and even when other routes may have not worked for you in the past, this is a totally different way that could be really helpful for you. And I do suggest that you find somebody who can help you walk through this and navigate whether you are a good fit for ketamine therapy or not. But CAP offers a way to access those deeper parts of the self with that safety and support. So tapping into the subconscious, looking at those things that we want to change, this is another way to be able to do it. And that preparation and integration is really the non-negotiable, super important aspect of the work. Healing doesn't mean the damage ever existed. It means it no longer controls your life. Even more so, those old narratives, the old beliefs, those no longer have to control your life if you have a willingness to be able to show up and do the work. I invite you guys to reflect on some of these questions and think about if this is something that is a possibility for you, or maybe you just get more curiosity out of this conversation today and you go and do your own research and have more conversations about it. But think about what patterns have I outgrown but I can't seem to break. Things that no longer are serving you in the life that you're living. Really diving back into that idea of, am I sick of my suffering? And what could I discover about myself if I got quiet enough to listen? It's one of the really, really brilliant things about this medicine is that it's going to give you what you need, not always what you want. And sometimes for us, that includes being very quiet and getting to know that deeper part of ourselves within the subconscious. I encourage you guys to check out ketamine therapy, get more curious about it, but also keep your mind open to these other progressive things like hypnosis or EMDR, brain mapping, other modalities that are outside the realm of maybe sometimes what we think about as traditional therapy, and being open and willing to explore some different avenues that could have really, really impactful long-term effects for you on your own mental, spiritual, physical journey. If you have more questions about CAP therapy specifically, we are 100% here for you and happy to answer any questions. You can send us a message or contact us directly through our website, but I do encourage you get out there and do some research for yourself and get into a different way of living your life. Peace, love, and abundance, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us around the fire today. We appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I hope that you found value in our conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and share it with your community. Remember, we'll be sitting around the fire again soon, so keep an eye out for more episodes where we continue to explore the stories and insights of first responders. Until next time, stay safe and keep the fire burning.